So trying to find a manager, either from your team or it's their skit manager or something like that, who's willing to make sure that you're getting the visibility you need to make sure you get a promotion and you get all the things that should come to you from the hard work that you're doing.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much. Before we continue, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. And if you see a question that you also would be interested to hear the answer for it, you can react with an emoji like a heart or something, okay? Okay, so now we are going to move to a part for specific questions more related to each one of your fields. So, Gabi, as a recruiter, what factors influence your decision to choose a candidate who is transitioning into the tech industry from a very different background?
Okay, yeah, so that's a great question. And as a good recruiter, I will say it depends a lot. It depends the company size and moment, and it depends on the fields that are being involved here and the teams. Just for one example, 2 years ago, hyper growth, it was really easier, much easier to join tech, especially if it was sales or recruiting. Companies were desperate to sell more and hire faster. So it was much easier. It was more about honestly just using a couple of keywords and showing that you were willing to work hard. Right now it's a completely different context. We have so many qualified people in the market that is more difficult, that even when you are capable of showing transferable skills, many times if you can choose between two people with the same skills, but one of them has those skills in the same field, it's a hard decision to go to the other one, right? So given the context we have now, what I would say is not only showing the transferable skills on a resume, things like trying to use similar job titles if possible, or a slash to explain, let's say in your company. Just one example, okay? Round pegs, at the beginning, my title was cultural specialist, because I wasn't only doing recruiting. My role was to understand remote culture and build everything related to talent acquisition, but my main focus was culture. That was our idea, but nobody knows what a cultural specialist does. So my way of showing that what I was doing as a recruiter was using cultural specialist / recruiter. So that's one way. If you use a slash and use the same job title that the industry uses, so you're not lying. And of course, if the job was similar, right? You're not telling you to lie. The other thing is also trying to use the same language. Tech has a lot of terms, that many people don't know. When you start to join the industry, to start to learn them, not only agile, but things that are very specific to the fields. I think, trying to think of something now, but I don't know, trying to use those keywords in the industry, instead of maybe using only Scrum. If you have used Jira or Trello, specific tools that can also help. But just to finish, I know this was a long answer. I'm Brazilian after all. The last thing I would say is that if you're transitioning now, given the market, maybe a strategy would be going to startups. Because the thing with startups is that they need generalists, because they don't know exactly what they need, really. So if you are someone with a diverse background, it's good for a startup. And if you're trying to become something specific, it's also great, especially if that thing is specific, something that they think they need. And given the context now with the bigger companies trying to, save resources, focus on specific tasks, the bigger companies want people with strong experience. So those, I think was a long answer. I don't know if I answered.
Great
You
question.
can
No,
answer that.
that
Okay.
was awesome, Gabi. I
Okay.
really appreciate. And I don't know about you guys, but for in Brazil, being a generalist is very common, much more than a specialist. So great tip, great tip. Thank you for that. JT, about your experience, comparing the experience that you're having right now with tech and the previous one. How do you feel in terms of job satisfaction and career growth, potential career growth between those two? How do you feel? Do you feel that you made a good decision, and why is that?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a deep question. uh, so before my career was teaching 6th through 12th graders, it's very different not having a group of 30, 11-year-olds running around when they do run around even when you don't want them to. It happens. Day to day, like right now, I'm, sitting at my desk in Tucson. I'm the only person in the house. I work from home. It's totally different. As far as like growth, like to be honest, and I think this is a good thing to talk about in the tech industry in general, is like I joined tech for the financial stability. Like I needed it. I don't think it's like a bad thing to admit. Is like it wasn't totally purpose driven. It was like I need to be able to like build a financial foundation for myself. I need to build one for my family. I don't mean just my partner and I, but also my parents, my grandparents, like, in the Latina community, like we're bigger than just us. Like it's just how it is. Like, I remember talking with colleagues at a company that did a really good job recruiting, folks from underrepresented backgrounds, and almost everyone was sending home like money home to their family, like whether it's within country or out of country. Like it's just how it is. You have to like plan for it. So I think from that aspect, like tech has been great for me. I'm at a big company now. I'm at Airbnb, but previously when I started, I was at a very small startup. There was only 15 people, and I think I was like 4 times what I was making as a teacher, and that was at a small startup. It's less than I'm making today, but like it was still a huge amount. And so I think from that aspect, like the change has been great. And I think in the future, if I want to go back to something like education, I'm going to have the flexibility to do that. But I'm also going to be able to like, I have a house. I was able to help my parents out through a couple like situations with debt. I was able to cover family when they needed a little bit of extra money, and like it just wouldn't have happened as a teacher. So yeah, I think it's been good. It's been what I would have chose it for.
That's Thank you so much for being this vulnerable. We really appreciate it, and I think we all can relate a lot. So thank you so much for that. Okay, Gabi. Here we go. Wait, I lost myself here. Sorry, no, I didn't. I found myself. What advice would you give to someone who's trying to? Oh, sorry. Yeah, similar to the first question. Sorry. What advice would you give to someone, and that will go for the more specific regarding the transferable skills? How can we sell those transferable skills to a recruiter and then to a hiring manager? What are the specific advice that you can give for those small steps in the process? So like the LinkedIn you mentioned about the title, but what about transferable skills, things that we can bring from our previous roles? How to sell that out?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is to understand the skills you have, because I think, and I maybe sound silly, but many times the person starts with the outside first, and you start to see what they lack of, right? And I don't know, in my experience, I understand that if you start with your context, it helps. So what industries have you worked? Like retail, JT said he worked in retail first. Someone transitioning to tech, maybe go to a retail tech company or like an e-commerce company. So you start to see, because tech, as JT said, like tech is not only software engineering, and tech is not only Amazon, you know. You have tech companies with cosmetics, health, education, like all these industries have tech companies, and that, in my opinion, and what is one of the easiest ways to transition. When you continue in your industry, but you transition roles, like let's say education. I'm gonna use JT as an example, but like he was in education, he was a teacher, so maybe he could have tried at the time with a education startup, you know, because he could sell like, I know the market, I know the user. If the user is a teacher, I was a teacher for 10 years, I understand that user, and I'm going to build solutions thinking of them because I know what they go through. So those types of like valuing what you have, you know, I think that would be another way. Is like, okay, I worked in retail, I was a salesperson, so you could try sales roles within tech companies, and after that you can try to change careers inside the companies. Usually tech companies are very open to like internal movement, so that could be a strategy too, because that's another thing too. Like the first job you get when you transition is just the first job. Like you have 30 years ahead of you, probably, you know, to get to that staff engineer role at Google. I don't know, I'm using Google as an example, but there are a lot of dream companies out there. So I think also having that in mind, that this is just the first step, is part of my strategy, especially in this market, because I think a lot of times we see people talking on LinkedIn about, you know, you need to find a dream job, take the time, continue searching, but we all need to pay bills. If we have families back home, we need to send money. Like, I don't really like that speech. I think it's best that you understand it's a long path. Anyways, another long answer, but to summarize, I think understanding your strengths, understand that your journey is valuable. And what you need to find is a company that will understand the value of it. And the example, I think, of retail, or like the teacher who knows the user and try to go to an education company, it's like the best example I can give. But yeah, I hope this helps.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, and I really appreciate you giving specific examples, because I think, again, we can relate to that. Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabi. And JT, how do you believe the tech industry can better support individuals from diverse background in navigating biases, cultural differences?
Yeah, Gabby, you basically like told my story in your answer. When I left my teaching job, I had left to do a PhD in a field called school psychology. So the basic idea was it was around mental health. It was about kids doing peer mentoring for each other, learning how to deal with anxiety and other things like that. And because my end of my teaching career had been very focused on mental health, I went and worked for a mental health startup. So like that's what got me in the door, was like, hey, I know this, I've been doing this. Like, you know, like I met at a hotel with the CEO. The CEO sounds fancy. There's only 15 people. Like it wasn't really that big of a deal, but you know, like just sat in a hotel lobby because I'd been volunteering for this organization where somebody who worked there was like, hey, we're hiring someone. And I had just finished my boot camp. So, you know, like playing to your strengths and then like seeing where that goes is definitely like a good way to get in. And I think it connects to your question from the aspect of like, once you get in to the industry in general, I think the tech industry, especially at the bigger companies, could do a much better job at helping people navigate the transitions into like higher paying jobs, better paying jobs, because, you know, jobs are jobs. There's going to be a dream job out there, but again, we do have to pay bills. It's part of how it goes. I'll speak a little bit to my time at Amazon, because that was where I was previously. I was at Amazon for a couple of years. I was on the leadership team for the Latinos at Amazon, ERG. I was the director of technical development. So basically my focus was like, how do we develop people technically? Now, Amazon is a huge company, you know, international, giant, even within the States, like just so many people. And one of the most fascinating things about it is that there's a lot of people who are, say, working in like the warehouses or as drivers and things like that. If you look at the workforce data, in non-corporate jobs, it's something like 28%, I think, in 2022 were Latino, like almost 30% were Black. Like all these companies are out here saying, like, where's the talent? And like, there's your talent. Like, you want to be more diverse, like you have it in your company already. And so I think as companies continue to invest in creating pathways from like, hey, you're just going to start here and you're going to work your way up into whatever it is that you're interested in, the pathway is like, there's just so many people. And so like, I think that that's where I would love the industry to continue to focus. And there are some programs. So Amazon has this program called Amazon Technical Academy, which I worked on, which is about anyone in the country, anyone in the company can apply. And then you get trained in a 9-month software engineering boot camp, and then you're a software engineer. That's an awesome program. You know, the change in pay from like, you know, working shifts in the warehouse to being a corporate software engineer is life-changing. And so I would love to see more of that kind of stuff. Is that the industry is really investing instead of being like, wow, you're gonna have to wait 20 years for all the talent to show up because like, you know, all these different systems have reduced the representation. Like, well, have you looked internally? Like, look at your customer support teams, look at your people in the warehouses, whatever it is. Like, there are people who are hungry to make the transition. So yeah, continuing the long answers. I feel like I've never been in a panel like this that's like Latino focused, that's short answers. It's just like not a thing, but yeah.
I appreciate you saying that. I don't know why, I don't know about you, but like while you were speaking, I was having like a little bit of fire inside of me, like, yes, let's do this. That's so cool. Well, before we move to Q&A, and again, feel free to add your questions in the chat so we can bring them up on the Q&A. I want to ask you both one question. If you were starting today, what would you tell that young, inexperienced you? What advices would you give to yourselves if you could look back or call yourself right when you were starting? So any of you feel free to go.
You want to go first, Gabby? Okay. I think I mentioned it earlier. Ask questions openly and publicly. I think that was a thing that I really was like, you're very nervous at the beginning that someone's going to figure out you shouldn't be doing what you're doing, you know, and I would just like work for hours on my own trying to figure out a problem. And then like 3 days later, I finally reveal I like have been struggling with it. And then the person I'm working with is like, oh, here, just go here. I could have been done with this days ago. So I think that that's, as speaking from my own profession, at least, like that is a skill. Like it's like the people who are higher in you know, staff engineers, principal engineers, like they don't care about admitting they don't know something. They're just going to go and research it, and they might have to do it with other people. And so I think that's what I would tell myself is like, just be open. Like, you don't know, you don't know. It's okay. That's actually going to make you look good, which feels counterintuitive, but it's true.
That's a great one. What about you, Gabi?
Yeah, I think for me, because I was lucky that I asked the questions at the time, but I think, I don't know, it's weird, but it's like really valuing myself. Like, you know, you have, okay, yeah, you don't know these things, but you know all these other things. And that includes the being a Brazilian and being a Latina itself, you know, because I think for me that was the biggest, especially when I started really working with like people in North America, teams in North America, companies here. At the beginning, I wanted to hide. So I think it was kind of the process that JT did with software development. It was for me as like it tested like, how do I say this? But anyways, being a Latina, so I wanted to hide I was embarrassed about my accent and not knowing some cultural um, details, you know. And once I started to own my Latiness, I understood that actually this is valuable. Oh, and that makes me unique, you know, and people want to learn more about it. And one organization, and this wasn't prepared, but one organization that was very important to me was Latinas in Tech. You know, getting to know and coming to these events really helped me to understand that this has value. And the thing is, the problem is the industry and the structure, not us, you know. So yeah, I think for me it was that, like, I would say that to myself in the past, like, it's beautiful to be a Latina, you know. It's not related to tech, but it's okay.
Love that. Honestly, I really appreciate you being that vulnerable, the both of you. I got emotional a little bit a few times because I think what your stories are so relatable, and I really appreciate you being this open about it. So now we will move to the Q&A, and we do have questions here. Just want to see how many we have. 3 questions. Yay. Let's start here with Heina or Raina. I've been working as a consultant software engineer for a year after switching industries where I worked more of a customer service role. I'm finding that my previous experience makes me feel comfortable as a consultant, but sometimes I feel like my team forgets that I'm still a junior developer. Any advice on how to navigate this? Maybe JT can talk a little bit more about this because it's a little bit more technical.
Yeah, especially, yeah, consulting is like a very interesting world in engineering because people is like, it's almost like you're not part of the team. Like partner worked at Microsoft and the consultants didn't get invited to like the company parties because like technically they're contractors, right? I think leaning into just being open with your teammates, so like, hey, can I set up like a one-on-one that's like reoccurring once a week for half an hour to talk about my project, talk about like the work that you're doing. I think it's really scary to take that step, but most people will be very open about that. And if they're not, then you find out maybe that team member's not the nicest, and that's okay. You know, maybe they're just not interested. Maybe they're super busy, but someone will be willing to like do that with you. And I think just seeking out proactively that time to say like, hey, I need support, or hey, I just want to talk through things. You don't even have to say like, I need support. You're just like, I just want to talk about our projects. People will be pretty open to that. When I was at Amazon, I think I had like 6 or 7 recurring one-on-ones with my team because we were all remote. So just like half an hour with everybody just to chat. Sometimes I was just hanging out, having coffee, and sometimes it was talking about work, and that can help kind of close that gap because I understand that being a consultant, there might not be as many programs for like you getting the mentorship and the support that you need, but like your team is there. You can connect with them and you can get what you need to make sure that you're developing.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We have another question here. I'm curious about the role of AI in the recruitment process now that generative AI is so accessible. How are you approaching it as a skill or interest right now? I think it's a great question for Gabi.
Just one question: as a skill for recruiters or for anyone? Well, I would just assume. Okay, for like at least in my experience, right? Keep that in mind. That's all from my experience. I haven't seen like, I know some people talk about like prompt engineering, you know, knowing how to ask the question is a skill that you need to develop. To me, it's still something that it doesn't really matter how you do it. What matters is what you deliver. So it's not like something that is required, prompt engineering. It's more like the results you get is still, you know. One thing that I see directly connected with AI and like large models is building them, reviewing them, testing them in the engineering industry, like software engineers building those things, or experience with artificial intelligence in the sense of building the models, reviewing the models. In the recruiting space, or in more like human, not, I don't want to say human, less engineering, but like product management, recruiting, those types of roles, I haven't seen as a skill, because it's just something that is too subjective to assess. And also there is a lot of, how can I say, it's still very vague of how good these tools work. So I don't see like junior people using ChatGPT to create models. It can be very dangerous because the chat bot has delivered a lot of wrong answers. And if you are not senior enough to see the errors, you create an issue, right? So I don't know. For me, in my experience, this is something that is still under development, unless you are a software engineer, data scientist, data engineer that literally build the systems, you know. Certainly something that is growing for sure. AI is the big word, especially for next year. I do see the industry growing, but prompt engineering, I see more like a LinkedIn, a great post topic, you know.
I love that. Thank you, Gabi. And we have one more question from Monica. I'm looking to transition to the tech industry from education, but not sure what I want to do or where to start. I've been an educator for over 10 years. Any advice? I guess you both have a lot to say on that. And we have a few minutes, so who would like to jump in?
Maybe I'll go first, because yeah, okay. So for me, it's connected with what I said before about like, first take the time to look at yourself, Monica. So like, what did you do in the education industry? Like, were you a teacher? Were you a principal at a school? I don't know, but like, whatever you did, try to break down your tasks, your responsibilities, your results, and also what you're willing to work very hard on. Because it doesn't matter like if you deliver results in something that is the reason why you want to leave the industry, right? Anyways, I think understanding a little bit about yourself can help. And maybe the next step is to understand a little bit about the industry. Like someone asked you in the chat about ed tech. So that's a type of tech company. Maybe understanding a little bit about the industry and the possible roles that you could have, like sales, business development, HRBP, program manager, project manager. Like tech industry has so many titles that maybe that could be a good second step. And after that, trying to see the intersections. I think as an exercise, because you sounded like really at the beginning of the transition, figuring out, I would suggest this exercise first. I don't know, JT, what do you think?
All of that is perfect. Yeah. I think in addition, like continuing to, like the exploration's got to happen first, because there are even things like, for example, I worked a lot with people who are writing curriculum for like the internal education and training in a company, right? So if you were a curriculum writer, it may seem like somewhere like Amazon doesn't have a job for you, but actually like all the trainings that we take at corporate, like those were written by someone probably with an education background. So that was a really common in as well. So yeah, I can't stress enough what you said, like, let's go explore, figure out what's out there. Once you get your foot in the door, the industry is wide open. It's just about finding that first job and then going from there. And you might just have to connect one or two of the skills you have now, which you have a lot of skills. I'm very sure of that. And you just need to connect one or two of those to that first step. And then once you're in there, you can figure out what's going on.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And we had one more question coming in. It's going to be the last one, and we'll wrap up. So Nayara wrote, I'm transitioning from a career in finance to AI. And in addition to that, I've also recently moved to Canada. One of my biggest insecurities is not just the career switch, but also my proficiency in the English language. Do you have any advice for someone like me who's dealing with both the challenges of breaking into tech and also navigating a new linguistic environment?
Well, coming from someone that also moved from Brazil with a strong accent to Canada, I think the first thing I would question is that how bad your English really is. Because we tend to think our English isn't good, but once you have the experience of working in companies, you will see that there are a lot of accents, a lot of broken English being spoken inside the companies. Because like if you're able to communicate what you want to communicate, that's fine, especially for companies that engage with diversity, right? So that would be my first question for you. If like, how good or bad is your English? Because probably you think your English is worse than it really is. And the second thing that I think is a good reminder is that for anyone, when you join a new culture, the language is a problem. So even for people who speak English, but they are coming from health industry, when they join tech, they struggle with the language too. And this is just an exercise that I had to do, because I think, especially as an immigrant newcomer, we tend to put ourselves in a space of devaluing, but we have much more similarities than we think with everybody else. Of course, we are different, thank God, and value that, because the difference is good. But I think it's just the problem with the value, the difference, and it actually has value. I don't know, I feel like today I'm advocating. It's just like I'm very thankful for the change of mindset that I went through. But anyways, practical advice that I would give is watch videos on YouTube, try to learn some of the lingo within tech already. So you do the two things at once. You learn the English, but you learn the tech English. I don't know, JT, if you would have any specific advice about learning the language.
I mean, I think the most important thing, everything you said was amazing, but also there's so many people from so many countries in this industry with I grew up speaking English. My parents decided to not teach me Spanish because they were concerned about, the bias that comes from people when they hear accents. And I think the longer I've been in the industry, the more I'm everyone around me who has an accent is super talented. To have been learning to communicate in another language than what you might have grown up speaking. And also, like you said, I have to learn. I came to Airbnb and I was like, what is everyone saying? I don't understand all these terms. Everyone keeps throwing around these different things. It's happened at every company I've been to. So yeah, embrace it. It's a pretty cool strength, and it's an amazing experience to, you're gonna have other people walk up to you and be like, hey, are you from Brazil? Cool, let's connect, and that's gonna be really awesome. So yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much. MCP, would you like to give the final words and close this up? Thank you very, very much, Gabi and JT.
Yes, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for being here, to our speakers, to all the Latinas in Tech leadership team, from Juntos also. So thank you very much. And again, I'm sorry very much for the cutoff on the Zoom link. And yeah, I learned about this already. So thank you so much. And yeah, if there's more questions, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Yeah, and let's see, maybe Gabby can share LinkedIn too.
We
Yeah.
will be sharing some resources. We have them on the slides, and we will be sharing that with everyone who attended. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anna, Gabby, and JC. This was amazing. I learned so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.